Welcome to Fading Memories, a supportive podcast for those of us caring for a loved one with memory loss.
Hello, Rachel. I'm Jennifer. This is my daughter, Laura.
Hello.
Hi. So, thank you for being on the podcast with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my first podcast, so I'm very nervous.
Oh, well, don't be nervous. It's actually a lot of fun. It's Laura's first, too, so should be interesting.
Yeah.
So why
Right.
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. Tell us a little bit about Grandma, and then we can move into how you became her caregiver.
For sure. Well, my name is Rachel Hiles. I'm 32 years old, and I live here in Kansas City, Missouri. I just launched my own graphic and web design business earlier in 2018. Before that, I worked at a University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, where we did research on improving quality of life for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. So I have a big background in the disability field, but my my skill set has been in graphic and web design and creating content and just creative stuff. So that's kind of where my path has taken me. But I live by myself, and I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and between them and Grandma and my work, I manage to stay pretty busy.
I'm sure. I'll pause right there for 1 second, and because we can see each other, but obviously the listeners can't. So I'm going to have my daughter, Laura, introduce herself.
Okay.
And a little bit about you.
I'm Laura Graham Fink. Right now I'm doing court running for a business here in the Bay Area of California. Honestly, just working through the first stages of being engaged and hopefully soon to get married to my fiance. We have one pet bunny who thinks she's queen of the house, and sometimes she is, sometimes she's not. It depends on the afternoon. I've lived in the Bay Area my whole life, and my experience with people with dementia and Alzheimer's is really just my grandmother, my mom's mom, and basically seeing how that's progressed from when I was little to now, unfortunately.
And we all have a creative link to each other. I'm also a professional photographer. And what is it that you have your degree in, honey?
Video game design for 3D modeling.
So Laura's got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Game Design, and Rachel does graphic design. I saw her website, and you do a little photography and video as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all kind of kindred spirits. So now tell me about your grandmother.
Well, my grandma, her name is Barbara, and she's 82 years old. She was born in this area and grew up here. She's an only child, like me. So that means our family and our circle is very small.
Laura can relate. Her dad and Laura are both also only children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, the struggles. So she was a teacher for many, many years in this area. When she became a teacher, she realized her passion was literacy. And so she got very involved in the International Reading Association and their local statewide chapter here. For many years, she did that. She's quite famous still for her work doing that. And then she also ran an adult basic education program for adults who had intellectual disabilities to practice their reading and writing. She did that to the school district, and then eventually lost the funding for it and kept it going even into her retirement, just on her own, in partnership with her church. And she's always been also very involved in her church. So she's a very accomplished lady. Um,
And what is her actual diagnosis?
so my grandma has Alzheimer's. Um, it's hard to say sometimes because, everybody has their definition of the stages and whatever, but she's getting to the point where sometimes she refers to me as her mother. um, and that's kind of funny to me because I've been told her mom was kind of bossy, um, but that's okay. It also makes me feel really good because, you think about your mom, you love your mom, and she makes you feel safe and loved. And so kind of, I secretly enjoy it a little bit when I hear her say that. But she can still do many, many things for herself. But she needs a lot of help with making good decisions to stay safe and healthy, and occupied with her time, so she's not vegetating in front of the TV all day.
Does she remember who you are sometimes?
Oh yeah, my grandma, she still remembers me. She just, I think, well, she was in the hospital just this last week, and I think what the issue is sometimes it's hard for her to remember our connection to each other, and so she's just kind of in her mind trying to reconcile that. But she knows me and who I am, and if I ask her, she'll tell me, "Yeah, you're my granddaughter." But how I'm her granddaughter, I don't think she knows that. And she has a lot of trouble, keeping straight who she went and did certain things with, and like all the different places she goes, they're kind of like all gelled together. So that's kind of where she's at.
So she's not as far along as my mom. My mom doesn't remember. She knows I'm important. She doesn't, most of the time, doesn't remember who I am. She's also has zero clue as to what day or day of the week, what time of the day, what season. So she's, her sense of time is gone. So I'm going to let Laura jump in here a little bit too.
You want me to ask these questions then?
Yeah.
So my mom's got a bunch of notes because obviously I don't know quite as much about what goes on with all of this as she does. And the first one is that 1 in 3 millennials finds themselves as caregivers, and often unexpectedly. Was it unexpected for you to be your grandmother's caregiver?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, I think since I'm an only child, her only living family, I think there was always an expectation that I would be responsible for her at some point, but I wouldn't say that we had any conversations in advance of, ultimately what led to me to be her primary caregiver. It was actually very sudden, although now looking back, I think I did have some signs maybe that I ignored out of ignorance or selfish denial. I can't really say, but I did very suddenly become her caregiver. It just really all happened all at once 3 years ago.
Well, I talked to an RN in one of my upcoming episodes, and she missed the signs with her stepfather. And she worked in a memory care ward. So if a trained professional can miss signs, then we don't need to beat ourselves up when we miss them, because not really sure. It's very common, is what I'm finding.
I suspect it's a little bit like when somebody that you live with loses weight.
Mm-hmm.
You don't notice it quite as quickly because it comes on so gradually. But if you were to pull somebody from another household that might not see them as often, it would be much clearer, much faster. So
That's actually a good analogy.
Yeah.
So does your grandmother live with you?
Currently, we still have separate residences. I am highly reliant on technology as it is, but I have We have Nest cameras in her house, in every room. That way I'm able to keep an eye on her when I'm not there. And normally I check in on them, but I try to observe her privacy, and not, spy on her all day. But that alone, I think at this point is one of the key things that allows me to still have my own house and space, for sure.
Yeah, that's super important because that's blah. Easy for me to say, obviously. That's one thing that I think people don't realize is that as they degrade, which is not really the nicest term, it requires more and more and more and more of your time. And for people like you and my daughter, I'm only 52. I just turned 52 less than 2 months ago. We still have full productive lives to lead. And my mom lives in a memory care residence, which has been great for her because she allows her to be social. And my sister and I are not responsible for her 24/7. My sister's got kids. My niece is 13. Laura's 27. So there's a big age gap between the grandkids.
My kids.
My nephew is 9.
Oh.
So
I lose.
it happens. It's hard. My sister's 4.5 years younger than me. So it's like, we weren't quite ready to be 24/7 caregivers. And when my dad passed away almost 2 years ago, that's where she was at. We realized that she was using her muscle memory to exist in the house that they had had for almost 47 years. I'm sure when you get up, if regardless, we're tea drinkers, regardless of if you're coffee or tea, whatever caffeine you need.
Looks like she's a tea drinker too.
Yeah, oh, tea, yay! See, all kinds of similarities.
Yeah, I'm like, I got that one a few minutes ago.
You go in the kitchen, you turn on the pot, whatever. You don't think about, I got to do this and that. And the next thing, you just do it. And we really feel like that's what she was doing, was just, it's.
The longer you're in a place, the more you can do stuff with your eyes closed.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question over here.
These aren't really posed as questions.
Well, what's the next talking point?
So I've been told that you're part of the SCAN Foundation, which I just learned about today. So I'm assuming other people will be unexperienced with it as a foundation. Why don't you tell us a little about what the SCAN Foundation is?
Well, the SCAN Foundation is partnering with Millennial Caregivers to create awareness around millennials like myself who are caregiving, and hopefully generate some conversations about that, so that we can improve policies and supports around caregiving, and hopefully end up with an outcome that younger folks are more prepared, and not reacting and making decisions out of crisis that they're not ready for.
Yeah, you hear a lot of horror stories from essentially both sides of elders that aren't being cared for properly, and then the caregivers that are, everything they do is for the care situation where they don't have opportunities for their own lives. So that definitely sounds like a good progressive movement for this situation.
It seems like with most people, when they realize that they've got a cognitive impairment, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever, denial seems to be huge. It's a common theme in a lot of the people that I talk to. So making decisions in crises seems to be a common problem regardless of which generation you're in. And I think it's harder for the baby boomers because they have a different mindset. I'm toying with trying to figure out how to word, you have wedding vows that say till better or worse, till death do you part. Well, unfortunately with dementias and Alzheimer's, death do you part is not necessarily physically dying, because, my dad took care of my mom. I don't think my sister and I were aware of how bad she was. Like I mentioned, we think she was using muscle memory. And I know it affected him. And I'm sure that it shortened his lifespan. He had a lot of chronic health issues, but
He was also really bad at asking for help.
yeah,
so
which is
I
very,
think-
very typical.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping with technology and knowledge that hopefully my generation, because I'm not a baby boomer, but you guys for sure would have less denial and less crises.
Do you mean denial like on the part of the sufferer or denial on the part of the family?
Kind of both. I mean, don't you feel like grandma and grandpa didn't talk to us about it, didn't acknowledge it?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, grandma's MO was I don't have dementia, I just have daffy moments.
Right.
Which.
Well, it's a tough subject, you know, and many people feel uncomfortable with the thought of needing somebody else to get through their day. So it is a subject that's hard to breach, but very important nonetheless.
Yeah.
I have an upcoming interview with a gal that is living with dementia, and she is all over Twitter like every day, and she's experienced some serious negative comments and attitudes like, well, you have dementia, or you don't seem like anything's wrong with you, is one comment that she gets frequently. Or, oh, you have dementia, so they just sort of expect her to just go sit in the rocking chair until she dies. I mean, it's like there's a lot in between those two attitudes. And she is a pretty big advocate for there is life after a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis. And I want to talk to more people like her, because what I've learned doing this podcast is how much you can, you know, my mom's had it for probably 18 years. And so there was many, many years where most people didn't really know, and many years where you knew, but with more acceptance, I think she probably would have been happier, and there's nothing wrong with that. So
Unfortunately, well, it doesn't seem like anything's wrong with you. That's not an uncommon thing for hidden illnesses.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten that with Crohn's a couple times, where it's like, well, you don't seem like there's anything wrong with you.
yeah, it's like if you can't see it,
Yeah.
you know, it's the people. But it's interesting that I've never experienced any of those kind of statements with my mom. I can't ask her at this point if she had anybody talk to her like that outside of my presence. I don't think so. And she would have probably taken them down verbally, because she wasn't going to put up with that nonsense. It's just very interesting. But I think not denying that you have a problem is important.
So then, circling back around to the SCAN Foundation, there's a specific movement called Do You Give a Care, which is working with the millennials. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I had the really cool privilege of having the SCAN Foundation and their crew come out here and capture my story. They met with 3 different millennial caregivers of different backgrounds and talked to us about our experience with caregiving. And ever since have been, you know, working on spreading awareness about millennial caregivers.
Where do they, I'm assuming 99% of that's online, where they spread the
Yeah, so obviously, since they're working on reaching millennials, it is an online movement. They have their website, which is yougivecare.org. And obviously, they're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at yougivecare. And basically just, you know, really working on positive messaging around caregiving and millennials, and encouraging people to be prepared, and sharing stories so that people don't feel so alone and isolated in their caregiving experience. That's kind of what it's all about.
I read on your website, Taking Care of Grandma, you and somebody else had a pretty creative solution to some respite care, which is extremely important. You want to share that story about the respite care that I read online?
For sure. So, one thing I learned in my past life at the IHD was that, we often think of respite as a, formal program that's offered at a place, that's a specific time or during specific hours. But really, when you get down to the bottom of it, respite is about creating space and opportunities for you to get a break from caregiving. So my example was trading places. You think of the parent swap or whatever. I am very good friends with one of my grandma's sidekicks. Those are her caregivers. I call them her sidekicks. It's a little bit more empowering. Anyway, one of her sidekicks has a daughter who's fairly close to me in age, and she has some disabilities, and so it's a little bit tougher for her to make friends, but we've known each other forever. Well, it just so happens that there's an event that my grandma likes to go to that happens once a month, and I personally really don't care for it because it's geared for older people. And so I was talking with her sidekick, Karen, about this event, and she's like, well, I actually have something, I think you could hang out with my daughter, and I'll take your grandma to the thing she wants to go to. That way, we both get to do something that we enjoy a little bit more than what we would have been stuck with. We swapped our carries for the evening, I guess you could say.
And that was enjoyable, and you got enough respite from caring in that situation?
I think it was, I think that it was a great alternative to suffering through the event and being the only young person in the room, which is what would have happened had I not switched places with Karen.
I can relate to a little bit my support group. I'm generally the youngest person that's helping take care of a family member, unless a grandchild shows up, which is pretty rare. Mm-hmm. So I'm usually the youngest caregiver with the youngest person with Alzheimer's who's also had it the longest. So I get like the home run on that. You should come with me sometime. It's pretty fun.
The one
downtown.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You have a month to think about it. Our group was last night, but I missed it because I got a little bit of a cold, so I figured I should stay home. Did we hit all the talking points? Or
we've gone through most of those.
So where are your parents in this whole scenario?
My grandma is my father's mom, and he is estranged from our family because he has a history of drug use and some violent and abusive behaviors that I just won't tolerate.
Good for you.
It's just me and my grandma. My mom is here in Kansas City, and she supports me as she can. But all of us have to work and have our things that we have to do. So just kind of mainly me and my grandma. I do have other supports. Like I mentioned, I use a lot of technology, to help her, but also to keep myself organized. And then, we leverage her personal assets. We are very fortunate in that, she is, like you said earlier, from a different generation with different values. She worked very hard. She saved all her life. And now, we're able to keep her fairly comfortable because of that. We have, caregivers that come in every day. But we do also, really rely on resources in the community. Like we go to the senior center for social functions. I help her touch with her professional associations and her high school class reunion. They still get together. And then I have, some help since our family circle is so small, and most of the responsibilities fall on me. I have some other help, like especially with her health care. That's a big thing. We have palliative care that we use to kind of help her stay comfortable and healthy and keep an eye on her. At first, I really took advantage of like having home health after, she was in the hospital to look for ways I could have her be safer at home and prevent falls, through like a walkthrough with an occupational therapist. So we do use a lot of different resources, even with her colostomy. She has a colostomy, and the place where I get her supplies here in town, they've been a huge help to me, answering questions about her ostomy and even just listening to some of the crazy stuff I go through. But I have a lot of support, I think, from like online communities that makes up for, the gaps in actual personal close relationships that we have.
That makes sense. Go ahead.
So would you say that trying to find communities like that or reaching out to other people might be something other caregivers here in my age, millennials like us, would want to take advantage of?
For sure. I think that, when you are a caregiver at first, you may not even realize it, for one. And for two, it's just very isolating. And you start to kind of think that you are alone. And so it is really good to discover people who have similarities, and share similar journeys. And that really was something life-changing for me. If it hadn't been for starting my blog, I wouldn't have found caregiving.com, and that's where I've made a bunch of my friends and new colleagues and contacts, and had venting sessions that were great, and gotten a lot of advice, and learned a lot of stuff about caregiving that's really helped me, not only as a caregiver, but also like a professional, using my expertise as a caregiver to, turn that into like, a business for myself. That's really been great.
And your blog is the caring for grandma one?
Yeah, my blog is at takingcareofgrandma.com. I started it 2 years ago in May. And it was really just an attempt for me to get the word out originally about caregiving and young people, and trying to, because I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't find anybody like me who was taking care of their grandma, who was young and, wasn't sandwiched. There's a lot of talk out there about sandwich caregivers, but there really wasn't a lot being said about people who are younger like us, taking care of our family members. And so I started my blog, and thanks to that blog, I found a ton of other resources, like I said, and it's really just changed my life. It really has.
So a little bit call to action and a little bit venting, it sounds like.
I on my blog try not to vent, or say anything too really negative, because I like to stay positive, just generally in life. But I think it's really important, because caregiving gets a bad rep sometimes, to stay positive. But I guess I would say my blog has been, a platform for me just to kind of tell our story, and share snippets of experiences that we've had so that people can learn from us, and also the practical strategies and information that I picked up along the way, really.
That makes sense.
And do you use any apps or what? You said you use a lot of technology. And I've learned about a couple of apps. One's not, it's only in beta testing, and the other one, unfortunately, I can't remember the name, but I might be able to pull it up here on the computer for you because it sounds like one that you might be able to use. But what kind of other technology besides Nest cameras are you using?
We have just recently implemented Google Home with the speakers. So we've been working on that. We've been trying to get the light bulbs to come on and off when we say so. And we have some more simple technology that's not really considered technology, but I still like to talk about it because it's so important. But she has, like a lift recliner, for example. That was life-changing. That eliminated a ton of fall risks. We have a bed rail that helps her get in and out of bed. Those are simple technologies, and I think those are sometimes just as important as all the super fancy high-tech technology that we all use today. But I use some medicine reminders with Grandma. Those are starting to not really be very helpful for her. We also, use music apps to listen to music. And she doesn't use the app, but the caregiving team uses Caring Village, which is an app where you can type progress notes and keep a community calendar and a communal to-do list, and have different levels of security or access privileges, I guess, for different types of relationships. And I'll say, at first, for a while, it was only me using it to take notes on her day. But as I, hired helpers, sidekicks, if you will, they began using it as well. And it's really become a robust support for us in terms of keeping track of what's going on in her life. So it's been a really great app that we've used.
Well, this one that I'm just started talking to the company about is called I'm Up, and it might be a little bit your grandmother might be too far along for this one. It's kind of a check-in app, and I haven't played with it too much because I've been busy this week, and I just started talking to him 2 days ago, so I haven't had a lot of free time. But it might be one that you want to check into because it looked really pretty cool. And I'm going to be talking to them in the next week or so. So that will be fun because the founder went through Alzheimer's with his wife and came up with this app. So I think that's pretty cool because I've met a lot of people who've gotten into this situation that we're all in and found a creative or business outlet as maybe part of the coping process might be good terminology. So did you have any questions for Laura?
Or my mom?
Well, so I'm assuming that you're helping your mom take care of your grandma.
When I can, because she's at the memory care clinic. It's more of a
Residence.
Is it a residence?
Yes.
Sorry.
Clinic is like a doctor's office.
You're right. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The memory care residence, there's not as much hands-on as other caregivers might have to go through. But largely right now, the way that I feel like I'm helping is basically being that person that's like, you're not alone. I am here with you, even if I can't help as much because I have a full-time job and I've only just recently gotten out on my own.
It's been almost 2 years.
It'll be 2 years in February.
Yeah, not that far off.
It's still not that long. Anyway.
What would you say you've learned about caregiving from watching your mom with your grandma?
Um, honestly, how draining it can really be. Like you hear it, and you hear stories, and it's another thing entirely to see it. Just how much even someone who's not doing the full-time care has to go through to make sure that this person's quality of life is as good as you can make it. Because I know the hardest thing for me is it's almost like with where my grandmother is, it's almost like she's not really there anymore. Because she remembers me as I was when I was in high school. Now I'm 27. That was a long time ago now.
10 years this
I
June.
know, it's a long time. So she doesn't know really anything about my fiance. She doesn't know that I finally moved out and have a pet bunny and like all the things that I've gone through. She doesn't remember me graduating college. So essentially the person that I am doesn't exist at all to her. So that I already knew was a hard part, but seeing how that affects my grandmother as well, because she gets kind of angry because I'm assuming she's getting panicky at not remembering these things. And that's just, it gets harder and harder to watch. So the thing that I've learned that I would want to share with other people is you really need to give the person that's doing the caring support because of how hard it really is to always be that positive figure, because you can't get mad at this person. It's not really their fault. They don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So when they make snappish comments about, you know, a loved one who's recently passed away, you can't be mad even though you really want to be mad.
And my mom doesn't remember that my dad passed away, which will be 2 years on March 2nd. So we're coming up pretty quick. And she gets very frustrated that he doesn't drive her places anymore. And she feels that he is dumping that responsibility on me and he's being unreasonable. And obviously, if I said, the reason he doesn't drive you anymore is because he's dead, that wouldn't be very nice.
It'll just upset her.
Yeah, then that, that would be all bad. And so I don't want that. And, so I always have to come up with creative reasons why he doesn't drive her. And lately she's been a lot more challenging about that. So when I went 2 weeks ago was New Year's Eve, and I said, oh, hi mom, I'm here. Dad asked me to come pick you up for your nail appointment, so you can get your nails all done for the New Year's Eve party tonight. The only thing factual about that statement was I was taking her to get her nails done. And she was fine with that until we got in the car, and then she starts basically not bad-mouthing him, but her frustration at his lack of dealing with the responsibility was acute. And it was frustrating because I go through that every single time I see her. Why is my husband not taking me? It's very trying, very draining.
Especially when you have to mourn this person and you're kind of trying to creatively come up with ways where it's like, they're not actually dead. Like, no, he's just at a meeting.
Which gets really challenging. Why wasn't he here on Thanksgiving? Oh, he didn't feel good, so he decided not to come. Okay. Then she gets upset because he doesn't take very good care of himself. It's just like, oh my goodness. But it's interesting. It's a challenge.
And it's essentially stuff like that I try to help with because I understand, because I know what happened with my grandfather before he passed, and I know my grandmother, whereas a support group can help, but they might not as acutely know what's going on.
Anything else?
You'll get any more involved in caregiving as time goes on, like maybe use your personal experience to go down a professional path in caregiving?
Probably not professional. I mean, if my grandmother continues to, I don't want to say worsen, except that's
decline is generally the term.
Yeah, decline. Then I would be more invested in helping her. And obviously, if God forbid something happens to my parents, I'll be taking care of them. But I'm not certain that I have the patience personally to do it for people that I'm not intimately connected to, like family members, which I know sounds kind of horrible, but I don't know if I'd want to do it professionally.
There are many different ways to use your personal experience with caregiving besides just directly providing care. So
you might be able to come up with an app. You did
Yeah, you have
great
a really
advice.
great insight and background and expertise and gifts that you can share. Awesome.
Definitely something to consider.
It's definitely planting a seed. She's planting the seed.
It's that's definitely something to consider, and yeah, there's a level of um maybe not understanding what you have to offer when it seems like a mountain. What really do you have to offer? Well, even a few steps is more steps that somebody else doesn't have to take, so something to consider for the long term.
So you liked the caring.com website for like an
It's
online type support?
caregiving.com. It's was launched in the 1990s, so it's been around for a long time. I feel like there are so many people on there that past and present caregivers that are just there to encourage each other and share with each other. And Denise, the leader, is dedicated to helping family caregivers of all backgrounds get what they need. So
I'll make sure that their link is on.
caregiving.com. I highly recommend it for anybody who has once been a caregiver, is a caregiver, or thinks at one point they might be a caregiver, which is everybody, unless you're just living under a rock, as my friends like to say.
That is true. I'll make sure that their website is linked on my resources page because I think I've looked at them, but I'm going to definitely look at it some more. And you've got a furry friend, sneak it in there. Do you have anything else you want to say about the SCAN Foundation or the Give a Care before we sign
Yeah,
off?
I think that it's really great that the Scan Foundation is investing this time and energy into helping people discover that caregiving is either in their future, or if they are caregiving, that they're not alone. There are resources and supports out there for you, and you can share your story and hopefully encourage others. It's if we all share our voice, then we can have a really powerful presence.
I agree. I definitely agree because I have met so many people through the podcast and learned so much that I don't know. I know it helps my mom, what I've done and learned, and that's why I try to share it with more people. So I totally agree with you on that one. And so the caregivers for your grandmother, are they there just during the day?
Yes, right now we have I recently like literally just this week increased the amount of time they're spending with her, but on a regular day during the week she has about close to 9 hours of support that I spread out throughout the day. So but she's currently able to still be by herself at night, but I still, like I said, keep an eye on her brother. On the weekends, I mainly am the one who's there, and then I work every other day, so I am able to get breaks. But yeah, we have a few different ladies that are all really great in there, and they help her out and take her to the places she wants to go, and help her stay safe and make smart decisions. And I really truly credit them and the technology, and my own personal network of friends and supporters that allow us to keep living, both each of us keep living our good lives. So
Well, I applaud you for coming up with a really great solution so far. I mean, I know as she declines, as her memory gets worse, you'll have to change that. But, what you're doing now is really awesome. And it helps. She's got her independence still, you've got yours, and I think that's important as long as she's safe. And it sounds like you're doing a really great job with that. So I applaud you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I thank you for inviting me to come on your podcast too. I think it's really awesome.
Oh, they're fun, aren't they? Just kind of sit and chat and learn. When I first started, I was nervous, and now it's just like so much fun. So, but I thank you, and I hopefully I can work with the SCAN Foundation some more, because I really like what you're doing and what they're doing. So I'm going to be looking into that definitely more after this conversation that we've had.
Awesome.